All right, so if you could stay behind the podium. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, in that neighborhood.
Okay, everybody, if you will, take your seats. We will get started. If I can get everybody to sit down.
It needs to be louder. Can you turn up the volume?
Can you hear me now?
It's a little muffled.
Okay. We have an unusual event. The security guard for the evening has not shown up, and so we have to leave at 8 o'clock. And 8 o'clock means packed up and gone. So it's going to be unusual, and we'll just move through this evening
Swiftly.
swiftly. That's right. So, how many of you are here for the very first time? Several. Good, good, good. Well, just wanted to mention how important these meetings are. Thank you for being here. A big part of what we need to do is educate the community, exploring different ideas, not necessarily proposing things that we need to do or you need to do, but just sharing ideas. It's important for funders to know the kinds of things that we're doing, and important for the whole community to get behind, make educated choices about what we're doing. We are starting our fourth year. The first 3 years, starting in 2016, was a proof of concept, really, to basically demonstrate that we can do this kind of thing, and I think we've done pretty well. We now are starting a second 3-year term, basically, to try to continue the good work. What we've learned is basically if we stop doing this, it all just goes back to the way it was, so we can't really stop. We love your support. Thank you for all that you are doing to help us. We just signed a new contract with the people concerned. So we love them as our partners. They are just the best. We couldn't ask for better partners. And we love our partnership with LAPD, and wanted to introduce Captain Davalos. Is that how you say it?
That is close enough.
Big Davalos. Good to meet you.
Well, let me just say very quickly, I know we're on a tight time frame. It's an honor and privilege to be here and be with all of you. I've only been here for a short time, but the support that I've felt here is like no place else in the city. So for that, thank you very much.
And we love our superstar, Jimmy and Rusty, so thank you for loaning us them. One thing that I should just mention to you, for those who aren't aware, in the 3 years that we've been doing this, we have helped over 100 people off the streets into some form of housing. 100 people, that is about, well, it's quite a few more than we expected 3 years ago that we would actually accomplish, so we're kind of proud of that. How many of you helped with the count last week? A lot of you. Good, good. It was an amazing experience. And there were about 50 people there, 20 of whom were new to the count. So it's great that more people are involved in the count. I think you all know the value of it. It's very important to fund the support for the homeless, the services and the housing. Thank you, Claire and Deanne, for the cookies in the back. And everybody should grab a cookie and water. Just stand up and go get that. Make sure you've signed in tonight, and if anybody is not on the newsletter and wants to be, we send out a newsletter every 2 months. So sign up for that. And we have special guests, one of whom has not shown up yet, Janet Turner. So we're going to change the agenda around. And I would like to now introduce Pam, who is our co-chair of the Communications Committee, and she's going to introduce our next speakers.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, I'm so happy to see all of you, our community here, to continue our discussion about issues related to homelessness. We really appreciate you coming out on a Monday evening. Thank you so much. Tonight, we are expanding our thinking about housing. Last summer, we had 2 developers of permanent supportive housing come talk to us. We will delve into a different kind of housing in our presentation tonight, providing temporary assistance to those whose housing is their car. We're going to begin by focusing, as you can see on our agenda, on a very local situation. The parking of vehicles along PCH, especially below the Sunset Mesa housing development. Our task force members hear lots of comments from the community about the issues and problems associated with the large numbers of vehicles that are parked along PCH there. We're going to begin with Stephanie Cohen.
Can we change the agenda? Janet has shown
Oh,
up.
yes, we will, to be continued.
But it's riveting and we're with you.
Yes, that's right. Janet? Janet has an important presentation that I'll let her explain. Janet, what is your title?
Field supervisor for Congressman Ted Lieu.
Field supervisor. I think go on.
Well, I know a lot of you already know me, but for those who don't, Janet Turner with Congressman Ted Lieu's office. I'm his field supervisor, and I happen to also be a Palisadian and very fond of the homeless task force. So, where is our special person?
He doesn't know he is special yet.
Oh,
You have to
okay.
let him know.
So, tonight, the Congressman would like to recognize someone who is very special to the community. And when I open my dictionary, I see a picture of this person. I'm going to let you be in suspense as to who it is for just a few minutes. It's really interesting. I think that passionate is the word that describes him probably very, very well. And it's interesting, a lot of billionaires have quotes about passion. Oprah Winfrey, for example, says, passion is energy. You can feel the power and force that comes from focusing on what excites you. And I think that's something that this gentleman does, for sure. Another billionaire, Sheryl Sandberg, she's Facebook's COO, says, it's the ultimate luxury to combine passion and contribution. It's a very clear path to happiness. And I think that's something that this gentleman has definitely proven. So if you haven't guessed, I'm talking about Rusty. Definitely happy and passionate about what he does. And I dare say that, you know, I don't know if you're a billionaire, but you might have a lot more than billionaires have.
I'm obviously on my way.
On my way. So we wanted to present you this Congressional Certificate of Recognition in honor and recognition of your remarkable commitment and tireless efforts in working with the Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness to patrol the beach, to clean up old encampments, and with sincere appreciation for your dedication to engaging hundreds of homeless individuals and offering them services and housing. Thank you so much, and with great appreciation from Congressman Ted Lieu.
not speak this often. So thank you guys very, very much. I did not see this coming, and thank you. Thank the congressman, please, for me. You know, you hear this theme a lot, and my captain was just talking about it as well. It's a team effort. Jimmy and I could not do what we do. I could not have done this without him, without my captain, without my fellow officers, but mostly without you guys. One needs not look any further than just down the road in Venice, and we were just discussing this. Most of the citizens down there, I believe, have the same thing that they want, which is what you all have got going up here. And that is for these folks to find the help that they need and get off the street and be in a much better place. But there's just trying to get everybody on the same page. I've been very fortunate in having all of you, and my phone obviously tells the story just in terms of how often we correspond with one another. But it is a team effort, and I didn't do this by myself. So again, we'll have some more conversation. I know this is going to have to be a short one. So thank you guys very much for the very much.
Okay, back to the agenda. We're going to start with some descriptions and photos of our local need. And then we will follow up with our main part of our presentation. We're going to begin with Stephanie Cohen, who comes from Supervisor Sheila Kuehl's office. She has been looking into possible solutions for this PCH parking problem. Following Stephanie, we're going to hear from Sharon Kilbride, our Law Enforcement Coordination Chair of the Task Force, along with Officer Rusty Redican from the LAPD, to continue the discussion about local vehicle dwellers. Then, after hearing about the need in the Palisades, we are so happy to welcome, wherever he is, Scott Sale. There, Dr. Scott Sale, Executive Director of Safe Parking LA, is going to talk to us about a different kind of housing option. Dr. Sale is an MD specializing in allergy and immunology, who has worked with a number of organizations helping homeless for over 17 years. He was one of the founders of Safe Parking, and Scott has brought along a special guest tonight, one of his clients, to tell us what spending the night in a safe parking facility is like. So let's start with
Stephanie Cohen.
Thank you. Hello. Can everybody hear me if I don't use this? I'm not a mic person. Okay. Hi, Chris. Does everybody know Chris Dragsdale? No? Okay. That's Chris. He's one of our senior leads in Westwood. He also was my police officer when I was in elementary school at Westwood Charter. And I like to embarrass him every time and tell everyone that. You're welcome, Chris. So I am Supervisor Kuehl's District Director. I'll give a little bit of background about parking issues on PCH because I think not everybody understands the extreme jurisdictional issues that we have there. So I think everybody knows that when Santa Monica ends, the city of Los Angeles picks up, and then we have Pacific Palisades. At Coastline, the city of Los Angeles stops, and from Coastline to Topanga-ish, a little bit beyond Topanga, is what we call county unincorporated area. County unincorporated areas are governed by the Board of Supervisors. So the way that you guys call your city council member, if a tree falls, somebody in an unincorporated area would call their county supervisor. So all of the parking regulations in that unincorporated area, the county Board of Supervisors is responsible for. Which means that they will differ from those of the city of Los Angeles, the city of Santa Monica, and the city of Malibu. So we understand that there's a parking issue in the area, not specifically related to homelessness though. I'll say that now. There definitely are some people experiencing homelessness in their vehicles in the Sunset Mesa area, but I would say that our biggest problem is in the summer, when we have folks who are coming in and out of the area, just sort of traveling and don't want to pay for RV overnight parking. That can be really challenging because it really restricts beach access in that area. For about 1.5 years, the county's been working with our Department of Regional Planning, our Department of Public Works, and the Coastal Commission to try to get some sort of parking restriction there for no overnight parking. Our first application was no overnight parking from midnight to 5 a.m. Coastal Commission was not okay with that. There is a story that I'm sure many of you are familiar with from the local media. Malibu went through with their application that said the same thing, and it was denied, badly denied. So we decided to withdraw our application and talk to the Coastal Commission further. We thought we had an agreement with them that was something like no parking for more than 24 hours and no re-parking within 24 hours. CHP and the Sheriff's Department felt that that would be fine, and it was enforceable, and that people who were experiencing homelessness would be able to get into different programs like safe parking or find a different place to go. When we went to submit our application, that said that we were told not to submit it. So now we've submitted our third version of this application, which is no parking, and I might mix up the sides, so don't quote me on this, please. On one side, I think it's the beach side, no parking from midnight to 2 a.m., and on the land side, no parking from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. CHP and the Sheriff's Department believe that this is enforceable. Of course, it is a traffic violation, so if there's a more serious crime happening that the Sheriff's Department and CHP need to get to, that they will go to that first, and they will stay there for as long as they need to over enforcing traffic laws on PCH related to parking. So our application had its first hearing in October in front of a county hearing officer. It was approved. The application was appealed twice. When an application is appealed, it's free to appeal. Anybody can appeal in opposition or support. So like if the decision is no, somebody can appeal that decision because they're in support of the parking restriction. That application went to the County Planning Commission, and it was continued until a hearing tomorrow, believe it or not. So kind of bad timing because tomorrow morning is our hearing in front of the Planning Commission. There were several issues that came up in that hearing. Most of them were related to homelessness and other jurisdictions with similar parking restrictions, which can be challenging, right? We don't want to make this issue about homelessness because this issue is not about homelessness. It's not about homelessness for our office, and it's not about homelessness for the people who live in the area. It's really about being able to access the beach. I mean, we have folks who call us and say, I live at the top of Sunset Mesa, and I drive down to PCH because my kids want to use the beach. But if I can't find any parking in the summer, then I can't go to the beach because it's not safe to walk down Coastline and PCH, which, you know, makes sense. When there's cars parked, you can't walk in the shoulder. So we're focusing on this issue of beach access. We pulled together a really good, I think, staff briefing. It's like 135 pages, so hopefully it's good. And so that'll be presented tomorrow by the Department of Public Works, the County Department of Public Works, to the County Planning Commission. The Planning Commission either approves or denies the application. If they approve it, it goes to the Board of Supervisors for a public hearing. The Board of Supervisors probably will approve it if it's approved by the Planning Commission, and then it goes to Coastal Commission for final approval. If it is denied, somebody can appeal it to the Board of Supervisors, which will result in another public hearing, and then the board will have to take a vote. The board can rule differently than the Planning Commission if there's an appeal. It's free to appeal, so that's kind of why these things get appealed quite often. But if it gets to Coastal Commission, we believe that we'll be able to get these enforceable signs up. A lot of folks have called our office and asked us questions about the signs that are already posted or that we reposted on the beach side in that area. There are not signs that were reposted on the land side. That's because we don't have any evidence that there ever were signs there. So we could only repost in areas where there were previous signs. However, all of those signs are illegal. They were not put up under the Coastal Act with a coastal development permit, as are the signs in the city of Los Angeles. So at some point, all of these signs will be challenged, and they will all have to go to the California Coastal Commission for approval. So we're hoping that we can at least set a precedent in the county area so that when other jurisdictions need to come to Coastal Commission, that they're able to do that. The key for us around homeless services in that area is to make sure that we have outreach teams there. So like the People Concern is out here, they're also contracted in Malibu. But in the unincorporated area, we have the Salvation Army and a LASA generalist team that goes out twice a week and talks to folks. Some folks are taking day services, some folks don't want services yet. But some of the really important programming that Supervisor Kuehl supports is safe parking through Scott's program, which you're gonna hear about. And that'll provide a real opportunity for the folks that are over here to get into those parking programs should they want to accept services. So,
What
yeah.
are the times again, the signs?
So the proposal is for one side of the street to be no parking from midnight to 2 a.m. and the other side of the street to be 2 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Wouldn't that cause people to move around in the middle of the night with the potential for a traffic accident?
It kind of does, and that's something we've discussed with the Coastal Commission and not something that the Coastal Commission was too concerned with. I think their general theory is that while people might move around to begin
They might
with,
leave.
they're gonna leave. So that's the theory behind the staggered no parking. They also don't believe in doing no parking at all, so that's why we have to stagger it. Because if we do no parking, then there is no access to the beach at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just have one more thing to say, not about safe parking. Our office has been working on a lot of bridge housing proposals, citing bridge housing in different parts of the district. So we have 3 projects in Hollywood, a project in Sylmar, a project in Canoga Park. We're supporting the project in Venice. And our last project that we just introduced to the community is in West LA. You guys are all familiar with the West LA Armory winter shelter site. We're proposing to build a permanent site there and move away from the winter shelter model. So we're going through a whole community process right now. This is a really big deal for Spot 5. As you guys know, you've been working on this for a long time. So if you're interested or you want more information, the website is supervisorkuehl.com/WestLA.
Is that on VA property?
It's
No,
not. It's
no.
on California National Guard property. So the state of California owns that property and it's not subject to the master plan agreement.
All right.
Great, thank you.
All right, keeping it local, let's hear from Sharon and Rusty, what they've found about vehicle dwellers.
Rusty, award winner, could you join me? Okay, I'm just gonna give you guys some numbers, welcome. My enforcement team, our volunteers, we actually count vehicle dwellers. So I have some numbers that we have from 2016, 2017, and 2018, just to kind of give you an idea of how many people that we find, that we engage with, that we offered services to in this community. Now, most of these cars are localized from the Bel Air Bay Club along PCH up to Coastline. That's where we're getting a lot of vehicles. We did put in some new signage because the other signs that we had along the coastline would be phased. And they basically say no parking from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So we've got new signs, so it makes it easier for this young man next to me to enforce. But just to let you know, in 2016, we had 289 vehicles that we approached and offered services to. And in 2017, we had 161. 2018, we had 348. So what does that tell you? A lot of people are moving, out of apartments because of no affordable housing into their vehicles. So there is a huge uptick. And we just had our homeless count, and most of the individuals that were found in our count were all vehicle dwellers. So that number really rose up this year. So I'm just saying the safe parking is something we all need to think seriously about, and it is going to be something that I think we're going to see more and more of in our communities. So I'm going to turn it over to Rusty to talk about maybe some of the challenges that we have with the vehicle dwellers. So thank you.
Okay, I don't want to take any shine from Scott's presentation coming up. I know there's some people here that are very concerned about what we're all here to listen to in terms of the safe parking. To apply a little context to the folks that are dwelling in their vehicles nowadays that we're coming in contact with. when we first started doing this, there was a lot of crime associated with some of the motorhomes, and you had a lot of methamphetamine use and a lot of drinking, and there was a lot of stuff that was going on top of the other issues down at PCH and Sunset. That has changed quite a bit since the beginning. I'm not saying that there's not some of that still goes on every once in a while out there, and certainly a little further past coastline, there's some issues up there I'm sure they're having. But in terms of the folks that we find on a regular basis in vehicles up and down PCH, a lot of them are folks that are sort of just recently homeless, or they're just trying to get back into the swing of things. So, and again, I will say that when I was first asked to come here and speak, I did a little due diligence myself, because I thought, okay, I hope we're not going backwards, but I don't think that's the case. And everything I've seen in terms of what Dr. Sale has going on here, and what we've got as a whole down along PCH, is most of the folks that we find that are legitimately living out of their vehicles are either have a job during the day, or they're trying to get into services, and they're typically very, very interested in wanting to get off the street, which kind of goes in with what the PPTFH stands for and what you have all sort of helped out with that. So the difficulties that we find nowadays down along PCH and Sunset, just using that particular area, is not what we found at the beginning of this endeavor. So we do find a lot, like I said, a lot of people that want help, they want to get off the street. And so the ones that are in the pipeline that are talking to the people's concern, it's very important for us to keep that relationship open in terms of, as the police. So some of the things, again, to go back to what we dealt with in the beginning, we're not having that same problem. Hopefully that sort of sheds a little light on those parking issues up and down PCH. It is very dangerous for them, like Bruce brought up, it is very dangerous for them moving their vehicles late at night or early in the morning. So that would be a concern of mine as well. Some of the other things we can discuss after Dr. Sale gets up and gives his presentation. But I think most of the folks, I know most of the folks that we come in contact with that are living in their cars now are people that are, like I said, they've just recently become homeless, or they're trying to get off the street. So they're always very, very open to our services. And there's quite a few of them that have been there for quite a while, and they're in the people's concerns sort of pipeline to get help. So some of the concerns that I would have had 3 years ago, I don't necessarily have at the moment. And again, I don't want to steal this sunlight, but some of the things that Dr. Sale is going to talk about, I will yield to you that when I first heard that I was going to have to come here and speak, I was probably like many of you, where I thought, okay, I don't want to go back to what we were dealing with at PCH and Sunset 3 years ago. And that is not the case. So again, I'll let him give the spiel, but does anybody have any questions?
What were you dealing with 3 years ago?
3 years ago, there was a lot of folks that were parking and leaving their motorhomes. So again, there was a lot of methamphetamine use, there was a lot of drinking, and what they would do is they would go, unfortunately, they'd go commit smaller crimes, but crimes nonetheless, and that was a problem. So again, once we first started, well, you guys first started this task force, and we came on board, we kind of looked at what was going on, looked at the crime trends, looked at the things that were going on, and we decided, okay, not only are we going to outreach, but when we find people that are either predatory, they're clearly out there looking to commit crimes, or there's some serious issues going on around their motorhomes or around where they were living, and we addressed it. And we addressed it with sometimes a letter of the law, sometimes a spirit of the law, but hopefully that answers your question. It was just, there was a lot of stuff going on down there that we needed to address.
Yeah, I'm just ready to introduce our speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you.
It's the hot.
Hi. All right, you're on, Dr. Sale.
Can people see, or should I turn the lights out?
Doug, they are sending, so we can
Great.
go to 8:30.
That's great, Doug. This is great.
Thank you for having me and being interested in this, the topic of safe parking and all of the prefacing remarks by Stephanie and Rusty and Pam and Doug. The task, not the task force, but the task of giving this talk tonight is, I'd say 55,000 times easier. That's the number of people in the homeless count, right? It's 55,000 times easier tonight than it was a year ago. And it was virtually impossible to have this conversation 8 years ago when we started the venture of trying to figure out safe parking in LA. I will give you a little bit of the history of, we'll deal with the slides, but now we have a little more time. And of course, I'm gonna bring up Carl, who's one of our patrons, one of our parking patrons, because I want you to hear Carl's story and how safe parking worked for him and why Carl is paradigmatic and a model safe parking patron. They're not all models, but Carl's a model. I always bring our best patrons here. I don't bring our worst customers. And we have some, but we try to minimize that, and we'll go into some of that. So what is safe parking? But before I go into it, I want to bring it back full circle a couple ways. First of all, I'm related to a Palisadian. I'm not from the Palisades, but my cousin Lori Sale, who you may or may not know, is a Palisadian. And so let's hear it for Lori Sale, who's a Palisadian. Since now I have a little more time to be a little more humorous, my wife's name is Lori Sale. And this is my cousin Lori Sale, who I never knew until we moved to LA, and another Palisadian, Mr. Zarinsky, introduced us and met Lori and said, "You're not the real Lori Sale. I know the real Lori Sale, and by God, we are really cousins. Our great grandfathers were brothers, and we didn't know that." So that's pretty cool. So I'm happy to have my cousin in the house. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was the idea of safe parking came to us through Bill Rosendahl in 2010. And Bill was your councilman, obviously, before Mike. And Bill came to us at our synagogue through a Venice Community Council, neighborhood council member who was related to a Leo Becker, which is where I'm a member of that synagogue. And he said to her, "Why don't you talk to those folks at Leo Beck? They have a great parking lot. They're really socially conscious, and they should do safe parking, period." And that's about as far as he went because he couldn't get anywhere in Venice. And 2 years ago, in 2016, we formed Safe Parking LA as a nonprofit. And in 2018, we opened our first safe parking lot. So it took all those years of advocacy for people to understand what safe parking was about. And I had no idea it was going to take that long. We took a few years off in between because the laws were not that friendly. But let me go into some of that and give you some time for Q&A as well. So what is safe parking? Most of you probably know, but just to go through it, it's a transitional, no more than 6-month refuge in the ideal world, nighttime only program for the 15,700 people living in their vehicles in LA, including families, students, single women, veterans, and the working poor. It's a city-county strategy for addressing homelessness. And Stephanie already left the house because she's heard me give this talk many times. But without Stephanie and Supervisor Kuehl's support, that we would probably not be having safe parking as alive and well today as it is. That support was not substantiated anywhere else, but and that also made it much easier. So I'm very appreciative of Supervisor Kuehl and her support. So safe parking has been a known strategy for addressing homelessness in Southern California for over 15 years. Santa Barbara has 28 lots with 123 parking spaces. San Diego has 2 lots now with 50 spaces. And San Diego, I like to mention this, has on-site case management. They have concerned type people on the lot every night. I will say more about that in a minute. So I gave you some of that history already. We actually started the original safe parking in LA at Leo Beck in June of 2017, and when the fires hit around Leo Beck, we had to close the parking program for many months, and for lots of other reasons, we decided not to reopen it, but because there were other lots that were gonna be more easier to manage. So why now in the city of LA? LA Municipal Code 184836 came into being in 2016, and that was a code, you all know about the winter shelter program, you all know about emergency, the shelter ordinance where you're allowed to serve for 90 days as an emergency shelter or parking lot. And there was never an ordinance that allowed anybody to serve without passing all the conditional use permit requirements that you could not serve as an emergency shelter for more than 90 days without getting a CUP changed. Well, 184836, which nobody really knows that much about, but we do because we cared, allowed any building, any parking lot to serve as a cold welder or a shelter for 365 days a year. It changed the landscape for how we deal with sheltering people who are experiencing homelessness. And LAMC 8502, also known as the Green Street Ordinance, is the ordinance where it is legal to sleep in your car on green streets, of which there are many designated in every city council district, but there are fewer and fewer and fewer as the months go on, for lots of reasons that it's not worth going into. But theoretically, the reason that 8502 came into being, and it keeps getting extended, then the latest provision extends the 8502 ordinance where it will be legal to sleep in your car until next June. And the whole concept was that there would be adequate safe parking programs available for people in their cars, or adequate housing for people, real housing, not car housing. So, and we all know that that's the rate limiting issue to the nth degree. So a few safe parking statistics: 30% of people are housed annually. And that's not our data. We don't have enough data. We've been in business 11 months. We have some data, but it's not really that useful data. That data comes out of Santa Barbara and San Diego. So the reason I bring that up is because if you get into a safe parking program and you do get case managed, and to Rusty's point, where's Rusty? The Rusty lead? Yeah, to Rusty's point, the people that we're now seeing who are living in their cars are people like Carl, or people who are the working poor, who want help and need a safe place to park until they can get the help or get themselves back, get their feet back on the ground, get their job reinstated, and or get the programs that are now available through the county, which is flexible spending funds or rapid rehousing money, intended for people who are now working or starting to get back and work. What are those funds? Those are funds that are made available. We don't dole them out. They're doled out through People Concerned, et cetera, St. Joseph Center. Those are monies for first and last month's rent or tapering rent money subsidy, so that you, if you don't have enough money, and you have a bad credit report, that you now have enough money and you can overcome that bad credit report and get into housing quicker, if there is housing available. So what else is important about safe parking? The beauty of safe parking is that the advantage of having safe parking programs is that the police officers in Santa Barbara County, San Diego love safe parking. LAPD, I think, is liking safe parking. At least the chief does. I don't know if you do.
I'm completely supportive.
Okay, good. But the chief loves safe parking, and why is that? Because theoretically it will reduce people parking on your streets and crimes against the people parking in their cars, and theoretically people think that the people who are living in their cars are the ones who are committing the crime, and that's really not the case at all. So it's a win-win for the neighbors, it's a win-win for the people living in their cars. So what is this number, the 750,000 nights? So we took the number of parking spaces available in Santa Barbara, San Diego on their own, and the number of days in a year and the number of years the program's been in, and of the 750,000 nights that there were people parking in safe parking programs, there was not one incident of crime on the lot or committed by a patron on the lot, and that's because the screening techniques and the people that we are seeing who want safe parking. That's the other thing I always like throwing out. We do not get calls from the Taliban. We don't get calls from El Chapo. They stay private. They don't come out in public. They don't want to be found. So they're not coming to our parking lots. Carl, you're not a member of one of those games, are you? Okay, just checking. So in LA, we have some data accumulated, and we're finding the same thing. So where are we today? I think this is current, because we made this as current as we could. So there are 7 safe parking programs in Los Angeles now. To go through them, I don't want to go through too much data, how we do it on time. We're doing. So there are 7 programs. Some of them are on private lots, some of them are on, we have a VA program that's on a federal lot, we have a county lot in Hollywood, we have city lot in North Hollywood, and then we have these 4 private lots. I will tell you where there are fewer decision makers, the easier it is. So what does that mean for this audience? If you own a parking lot, or you own a synagogue, synagogue's not so easy, church is not so easy. But we actually have a fellow who owns a warehouse down in the San Pedro area, who offered his lot to us 6 months ago, but I don't have the money to run the lot. He's the only person that gets to make that decision. Because of that ordinance 184-836, he's allowed to use that lot at night for whatever purpose, for shelter purposes. But we don't have the money yet. So where there's one decision maker, it's a lot easier. Where we had to go through all the bureaucracy of all these other agencies, loss included, it's just way more complicated. And I would have thought that it would have been much simpler going to a church, and the church says, yeah, we'd love to have it. Not that easy, because the church has ministry, they have a pastor, they have a diocese, they have all kinds of people that want to weigh in, and it's all about liability, et cetera, et cetera. We'll go into some of that. So right now, there are 130 safe parking spaces in the city of LA. It's kind of pitiful. How many people park in their cars? Thousands, thousands. We have killed ourselves, and I'm not bragging, I'm more or less complaining. We've killed ourselves to get 130 spaces. It's brutal, brutal, what it takes to get the spaces, to manage the spaces, and furthermore, to get the people who are living in their cars, getting them connected to services. That's a whole other thing that I'll get into at some point. So I don't need to make this argument, you've heard this already, about there are people in every community. We heard the count from you, Sharon, about the counts going up and down, or there's still plenty of people in the Palisades, in the area there that are living in vehicles, and there are people who don't want to be in their vehicles. So remember, safe parking is not intended for people who want to live in their car the rest of their life. This is a temporary program. This is not permanent parking. This is not permanent housing. This is intended for people who want to not live in their cars. So what do we provide on the lot? We provide insurance. We provide an unarmed security guard while the patrons are present. We provide a restroom. We provide a wash basin. And if you're a private lot owner, we provide some money for soft costs, electricity, et cetera, et cetera. So the bare bones of a safe parking program, where we have it on our public lots, the city and the county and the VA, where we don't have as much control as we do on a private lot, are the bare bones of a security guard, a wash basin, and a restroom. Our private lots, we have Wi-Fi, we have picnic tables and benches, we have electrical plugs where people can charge their devices. One of our lots I call the Ritz-Carlton of safe parking, because it has everything. There's a dinner service, it's the way it's really that we would like it to be. But we're constrained by the lack of parking lots. But I will say, today the conversation's easier than it was yesterday. And there will be, I don't know what the number will be, I know what our goal is. I'm not going to tell you what our goal is, because then it'll be a self-fulfilled failing prophecy. But our goal is a lot, but it takes a lot to get these lots going. So I already gave you all that stuff. So for the patron, we have how do we screen the patrons? We have a 2-step application and interview process. We have made a few mistakes where we brought some people on the lot who interviewed well on the phone, their application looked good, their car was insured and registered, et cetera, and we missed the fact they've been living in their car for 10 years. They liked it in there. They were hoarding everything, and it was all in their car. So we made a few mistakes, so we now have learned how to do that a little bit better, but we've had no We've had no crime on our lot, that's the important thing. Everybody worries about children, that's a big concern, because how do we protect the kids? Well, our screening is part of it, we have a guard as part of it, and our hours are after normal children hours. So where we're at a church lot or a synagogue lot, or we're next to a school, our St. Mary's parking lot in Koreatown, there's a preschool next to us on the north, and there's an LAUSD elementary school to the south, and we've had no trouble. And that's the way it should be. If we're doing our job, and the guard's doing his job, and we're bringing in the right people, and we hardly say no to people, and that's the other point. We don't have to say no because the people who are calling us want help, okay? They're not looking for trouble, they're looking for help. So what else we do? We review license, registration, insurance. Some people, they're not current. Some people are not compliant. We help them. We have programs now to help them with their registration, with their insurance. We have one bare minimum, that is you must have an active current driver's license. We won't let you on the lot without it because our insurance says that that's forbidden. But we can get you registered. We have a program with the registration company in the state of California. We have a program through a private insurance broker. We do screen in the National Sex Offender Database. We do screen all single men to make sure that we know who's parking on our lot. And in the 1,000 applications that we've had already in 11 months, 1,000 is a lot, that we've only had one sex offender come through. And when I talked to him about it, I said, you know, we just need to know who you are. And he said, yeah, my offense was 25 years ago, and he opted not to be on the lot. Maybe he wasn't telling me the truth, but we haven't had anybody else on our lot. So what about the connection to service providers? We have found now in our limited period of time that's the biggest issue. And we were promised by the service providers, because I'll say it this way, pardon me, I slept with all of them for years. I knew the head of St. Joseph Center, I knew the head of People Concerned, I knew the head of PATH, I knew the head of all the agencies, and they all promised me, oh, it'd be no problem getting case management on the lot. It's a problem. Case managers work 9 to 5, and our lots open after 5. It's that simple. So we said, so hire people to start working later, and we're getting there. Through LASA, through everything, all the conversation, right? We are getting there, it's the right answer. Either that, or we're gonna move to the Real San Diego model. You know, if you remember that in the original slide, we're gonna move to have our own case management on site instead of a guard. You don't need both, because case management, the guard is just somebody who can call 911. They're unarmed, okay? They don't serve as social workers or case managers. They really don't know how to interact. They're there to protect the patrons. The neighbors think they're there to protect the neighbors, but they're really there to protect the patron. And I'll let Carl tell you a little bit more about that, because Carl now has a new role with safe parking. Why don't we do that? Why don't you come on up here and tell them your story and morph into your new role at safe parking? Let's do that, and then I'll continue, or not.
We can have room for, we can have time for questions.
Yeah, what time is it?
Okay.
We're good now.
Yeah, we got till 8:30 now, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we think we are.
Yeah, otherwise I would have stopped a long time. Yeah. So, Carl is, I'll just let you introduce yourself. So Carl's one of our prize patrons. We love Carl to death, that's why he's here, obviously.
So thank you all for coming. It's an honor to be here in front of you all. My name is Carl Javorian. I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech with a degree in biology and a minor in chemistry, and I was a proud member of the Safe Parking program. I was determined to pursue my passion in music, so the Safe Parking program allowed me to be physically located in LA, network with colleagues, find a source of income, all while looking for a long-term place to live. I was part of the program for about 2 months, and I'm happy to say that I did find a long-term living situation. I am working, I am gaining connections, and I'm in the music industry. Also in my spare time, I volunteered for the program, and I'm just happy to be living, working, and serving in my community in LA. Living on a lot made me feel like I had a safe place to be in such a big city. The hours are reasonable. I never felt like I or my fellow Safe Parkers disturbed our surrounding community, and the guard kept us great company. I was thankful for the smooth experience, and I hope others will feel the same way when they start parking right here in the Palisades. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
job when you're on the lot?
I did not. That's, I'll just go ahead and answer
Yeah,
that.
yeah, go ahead.
None of that is allowed. No tobacco, no drugs, no alcohol, so.
Have you had any of these guys who are bird and lime chargers that recharge all these scooters try to get in on the lot and use the electricity at night? 'Cause that can cost big bucks in electricity.
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. So
They have their own charging, they have people who come around and collect those and then charge.
Right.
More of a medicine.
So do you want to tell what your new role is going to be as lot coordinator? Why don't you do that?
Basically, I'm just gonna be visiting the lot, opening it up, serving the dinners, and getting to know some of the clients, and providing them with any resources that they may need. So I'm really honored to be a part of that now, and yeah, so thank you very much, Scott, for the opportunity.
Which lot?
The Koreatown lot, I don't know what the name of it was up there,
St.
but
Mary's, yeah.
St. Mary's.
So let me go into a little more discussion about that. So we're moving into the San Diego model as much as we possibly can. So instead of paying for security guards, we're gonna pay Carl. And we've always said that that was our goal. So many of these people are not working and they need a job, and many of them are qualified, honest, honorable people who would love to give back. And we've had several people give back. There are give back programs, there are community service programs, but this is really my goal, is to have lot coordination done on the lot. And the real San Diego model, because these programs, the way we've developed it in the city of LA is so expensive, and I can go into some of that, but it's way more expensive than it costs currently, let me say it that way, in Santa Barbara and San Diego. Why is that? Because we have to have a security guard 12 hours a night, and that's not cheap. So a security guard costs $250 a night, and 7 nights a week is $1,750. It's about $80,000 a year, and times 8 lots is $640,000. And I haven't done anything. I just had a guard. So our goal is to get away from that. It's to have people like Carl be on the lot, do some of the case management with a Wi-Fi, with a laptop, make sure they are connected through the CES, through the HMIS system. You guys know all that lingo jingo through LASA. Those are all the ways that the database knows who these people are and what's available, so they can get to their housing navigator, get to their matcher, and get to their case manager, so things get done. So our goal in the ideal world, what I've come to realize is we like lots that are gated and closed, and so that we can close the lot up at night so they can get out in the middle of the night during an emergency, but no one can get in. So that when it's 10 o'clock and lights are out and taps are blown, that people can go to sleep, and the case manager, the lot coordinator can go home, and people can man themselves. So we actually, not by design, but by fault, I'll say, not default, by fault, one of our lots is currently operating without a guard, okay, for the last 5 nights because the insurance got screwed up. So we couldn't operate the lot. So the lot owner said, well, let people stay there. We know all these people. So they are manning themselves. And that's actually the ideal. That's where we're trying to get to. That's because we need to save the money for other purposes. We need more case management, we need more housing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the goal, is to get to that point, but we're not light years, we're a few years off when that will be an acceptable concept. Just like it's easier to have this conversation today than it was yesterday, and that's a beautiful thing. We're still good. So here's some of the rules as Carl referenced. No guns, no drugs, no alcohol, no smoking, no camping, no cooking, no flames, quiet hours, and mandatory vacate, depending on the lot, at either 6, 6:30, or 7, depending on what we've worked out with the lot owner. And that's become a little bit of an issue. So what do we do if somebody wants to stay? Well, most of the people don't want to stay. Their cars break down, so we have to get them towed, we have to get them jumped. All those intricacies of how all of our cars function, we've had to deal with. But occasionally we've had some malingerers. So they get 3 strikes and then they're out. And I don't know, did we actually get somebody that got 3 strikes? We've gotten 2.5 strikes. So we try, and I only say it that way because we feel bad for these people. they're having a tough time. So we want to be lenient, we want to be understanding, but at the same time, we have to protect the lot, because the lot is used for other purposes during the day. We're aware of all that. The private lots, again, easier, public lots, not so easy. Letter of the law on the public lot. So we operate a county lot in Supervisor Kuehl's district in Hollywood. That lot, we have learned so much from, because we need more county lots. We have another county lot we've been trying to open for 4 months, but because of the rules and regulations of that lot and how there's a compliance officer for LA County. That compliance officer is, torturing me on a regular basis to make sure that we are letter of the law. The private lot's not so much. She's not wrong, but she's not absolutely right either. But I understand where she's coming from. It's all about liability, it's all about insurance. So we're soon to open another county lot in North Hollywood sometime in the next couple of weeks. Let's see what else I have to share with you. So this is all part of the advocacy work we do. When we get started in community, we gave a talk to this community, to the Palisades Community Council, I don't know, 9 months ago, something like that. It's all part of having a conversation, all part of getting people used to the concept of what safe parking is. So we've given a talk to all the senior lead officers downtown as invited by Captain Moore, our Chief Moore. So he invited us down there. We gave a talk to 250 senior lead officers. That was a beautiful thing. So obviously LAPD thinks that this is a useful program. We talk to neighborhood councils, we talk to neighbors, we deal with the city council, supervisor offices, the mayors, all over this stuff. And we deal with lots of different city departments, but not sanitation, because we don't need sanitation on our lots. So who pays for safe parking? Each lot costs $132,000 a year to run. That's a lot. That's ridiculous, right? But we've got the guard, we've got the porta potty, I have some staff, but one of the biggest things that we've come to do is we've actually gone to our grantors, to the city and county, and asked for discretionary money, we call it, to maintain people's vehicles. That is vital, because my mantra is a car roof is better than no roof. And if they lose their car, and we've had people get booted and towed and ticketed and all that stuff, and when they lose their car, it's worse, right? Then they cycle in the wrong direction. They spiral downward, and they end up in a tent, in a canyon, in a somewhere, and we can't have that. So that's why we have all this discretionary money. That's where I'd like to see the bulk of the money spent in our world, in addition to better case management. So problems with patrons, we can evict, we can tow, and we have. Safety of children, as I mentioned before. Actually, our Ritz-Carlton lot is an overlap program. We have kids playing basketball at the same time our people pull in the park. We have music groups, we have choir groups, they're all there in the church building while our people are parking. So it can work, it's just most people are not aware that it can work with proper supervision and the proper vetting and screening of the clients. Let's talk about RVs, because RVs were sort of mentioned, RVs out on PCH. We don't really welcome RVs. Most RVs are difficult to manage, they're not in good shape, and people in RVs generally want to stay in an RV. So we do have some lots that can handle RVs. We brought in a couple RVs. The county, Stephanie didn't really mention, but there's this whole issue about not just unincorporated here, but there's lots of pockets of unincorporated LA County where there really are no rules and regulations. People can park all day, all night, and they're not ticketed and they're not towed. So if you go to Willowbrook, I don't know if you guys know the Willowbrook area down in the South Bay, there are hundreds of RVs on the sides of the street, and nobody can do anything about it. But the county knows they have to do something about it, because those are drug havens and problems for the surrounding communities. That's a pretty commercial area. So we do accept RVs, so we deal mostly with cars, campers, and vans, and very rarely do we get somebody from an RV asking for help. So in our first 10 months, I guess it's now 11 months, we've had 500 inquiries, 400 without an HMIS number or CES. That's an impressive figure. These are, I call them virgin vehicle dwellers, right? They've not touched our system. These are people that need help, right? They need rapid rehousing, and they've not been touched. And these are the people that we're trying to help, and the ones where we're trying to get case management or outreach, be it an E6 or a people concern, onto the lot. And I think we're finally making some progress in that regard. So we've issued 240, I'm sorry.
Would you define the two initials?
Oh, HMIS is Homeless Management Information System. It's the LA County's computerized base for homeless services. So if you are deemed to be homeless, you qualify as a homeless individual, that you would fill out a coordinated entry survey, CES, and you would then, that data would go into the Homeless Management Information System. And theoretically, once you're in that system, that you would be designated a case manager, who would then be your, that case man, you would be the responsibility of that case manager to help figure out what are the benefits that are available to you, what services are available, and get you figure out who the right housing matcher. That's another person in the homeless management world, a homeless matcher, to find a place where you could live. And since we're limited on housing, that's the rate limiting issue. So of our 240 permits that we issued, 62 people have been housed, not because of us. We just happen to know that 62 people found housing in Lake Carl. 52 are still parking regularly. Many are lost to follow-up. We don't get to put a chip into their forearm and follow them. We just have to rely on them to tell us where they are. Over 50 persons have been helped by our program with insurance, with having gotten booted, having gotten towed into tow yards, and connections to the CAP program. The CAP program is the Community Assistance Parking Program of LADOT. So if people who live in their cars are more likely to get parking tickets, and when you get a parking ticket and they build up, then you get penalties, and you get 5 parking tickets, you're out, you're booted, you're towed, and it's a problem. And we are into the boot and tow prevention, and so we get them connected to CAP. If you go into CAP, you get your fines reduced drastically, and then you have to do community service for the other part. You still have to pay part, but you do community service the rest of it. You guys should probably sign up to be a community service vendor through CAP. You could do that. It's easy. So Safe Parking is a vendor. So we accept a few people. We don't have a lot of volunteer opportunities for people, but it's a way so people concerned does community service and stuff like that. So CAP's a pretty cool program, but it's only in the city of LA. It's not in the county. It's not in all the other 88 cities of the county. So CAP is a really cool program. So what are the next 6 months' goals? On-site outreach, you've heard me talk about that a lot. On-site case management, better integration with the HMIS system, homeless management information, and 3 to 5 more lots in the next 6 months. We're opening Corinth, that's in West LA by the Felicia May Hood Senior Center. We're opening that hopefully tomorrow night. Malibu wants to open a lot. We have money. We don't have money for Malibu. We have money for a lot in CD 15 out in, not 15, CD 3 out in Reseda. Silver Lake wants a program at a library. San Pedro, there's the private lot owner. There's a consortium of 2 churches and a synagogue that are that have passed a resolution to do safe parking in their area, and there are others. There's some in CD8 and some in CD9. So it's pretty exciting that I think in the next couple of years that there will be many more safe parking programs. The question is, are we still making a dent? I don't know. So what's the most important thing we can do? Reconnect people with a caring community. That's part of what we do. And now we're starting a partnership with Miracle Messages. Does anybody know that program? So it's a program started up in San Francisco for people who are isolated from their families or have been estranged from their families, reconnecting them to family. So and a lot of people who live in our lots are isolated. They're single people for lots of reasons. And so we're going to connect them with Miracle Messages and try and get them out of their vehicle and back into housing sooner. So I'm open to questions with that time. Yes?
I have a couple of questions.
Please.
How do you ensure that it's a short-term
Yeah, we don't.
Okay, that's what I thought. Also, you know, believe me, I don't think the LA Times is always the arbiter of good news. But at one point, they had an article about a month and a half ago. They said $950 million had been collected for homeless issues. And I'm sort of wondering, where is it? Why do you have to wonder where you're gonna get your money from, first of all. Second of all, $132,000 for each parking lot. There's a company, it's called 3D Printer, Icon, I-C-O-N. They manufacture for lack of a better word, a robot that makes houses. And it costs $4,000, and it takes less than 24 hours. Why are we continuing to have people living in their cars when we can efficiently and economically house people in housing?
So
It just, to me, we've lowered the bar. I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me. When are we gonna stop putting a Band-Aid on this cancer?
I'd
It's
like us to
terrible.
focus tonight on safe parking. There's a lot of other times for housing issues. What you're saying is very important, but let's keep it to a question. Was there a question for Scott?
Carol.
Yes.
He answered,
Okay.
he answered my one question, but then why would I want this anywhere near our neighborhood if they're doing silly things to continue the problem instead of doing smart things, which is the problem to begin with. They haven't thought of it.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Next
a question, Scott. Could you talk a little bit about the demographics of the people that use your program? Do you see a profile, a certain age, male, female? Is the education, is there any commonality?
I'd say the only I'd say the demographic is mostly people in their 50s and 60s. Carl's an exception. We have a few young people. We have almost no families. And why is that? Because the families, there's a mandate in the county to manage families differently through all kinds of different programs. So we do get some families. We will house them on the weekend. We have mostly single people, very few couples, a few elderly, not too many. What I didn't give you was the veteran data, which we're also proud of. So we've permitted like 100 veterans who come into the safe parking program, and half of them got housed. So the concept of getting them into a stabilized situation where they can do their work during the day, that's what we sort of say, where they can sleep at night, they can take a shower, we tell them where they can take showers. We don't do showers, that's a whole other complicated issue, but we tell them where there are showers available that are either free or not. Our biggest thing is we like people to join Planet Fitness, where they can join for $10 a month, and they can take a shower 3 times a day if they want. So, for $10 a month, I can't take a shower 3 times in my own home. But anyway, so the point is that we try and connect them in such a way, so to answer that woman's point, we don't want people staying on our lot for more than a few months. And if they're working with their service provider, with their case manager, and doing their work, and there is dialogue between us and their case manager, as long as they're doing the work and the case manager says there just isn't any housing, they got their voucher, they got this, and they can't find housing, then they're welcome to stay. We want them safe.
Question on this side. Patrick.
We learned when we were first formulating PPTFH. When we were first formulating PPTFH, we went and got trained on the coordinated entry system. And my question is, who is administering that? Is it Loss Outreach workers? And secondly, is the SPDAT, which is it's sort of a very long mental type of application form, is that still used?
Yeah, all of that is done. Our approach was always that we were going to integrate with the service provider in our service planning area of our spa. And we knew who they all are. They're all assigned by LASA. So you're the lead in spa 4, you're the lead in spa 5, you're the lead. So we had relationships with all the leads. And it was the lead's job to do the SPDAT and to get them into the HMIS system. We found that system broke down. because the leads were too overwhelmed with too many other people to deal with. So the question is, should we be doing it ourselves? Our mantra was always, that's not our job. Our job is to get you safe and to manage the lot, protect the patrons on the lot, et cetera, et cetera. It's another employee for me to do CES, because our staff doesn't have the time. We have too many other things to do to manage their lives aside from CES. But I think we will morph into that. So SPDAT's still there. So to raise that question, so when you have a high SPDAT, that's a score that indicates how vulnerable you are to to have more emergencies in your life, to losing your car, to having medical issues, to having drug issues, et cetera. The higher your score, the more vulnerable you are, and those are the people that were always targeted for permanent supportive housing. They need more support. We deal with people with low SPDATs, okay? So that's a criteria, but we don't always get the SPDAT score. So we rely on our interview and our application and our two-step process to be able to figure out whether somebody by Gestalt has a high SPDAT or a low SPDAT. And that's where we had made some mistakes. So now we do a little bit better screening, because we don't want chronically homeless people who want to live in their car. We don't want them on the lot. We have a difficult time dealing with those people.
Question on the left here, Larry? Sheriff behind you.
Just a quick one, here we are in the Palisades, have you approached anyone here about using their lots?
We did a while ago, and we didn't really make much progress. And we got our hands full, to be honest, at the moment, managing the lots we have, and a half dozen other lot owners that have raised their hand. We have a lot opening in Westchester, hopefully in the next month. It's a small lot, but it will grow to a bigger lot. There are no designated lots in Venice. The Corinth lot will start with 5 vehicles. It'll grow to probably 50 vehicles in time. So it will handle some of the pressure. But we need 300 lots is really the ideal number. In LA County, we need 300 lots.
If I can chime in, I've talked to a couple of churches, and they typically raise a question about, is a sloped lot, which is what happens around here a lot, acceptable? I assume the answer is no, you can't really have a sloped lot for safe parking.
I've never had one offered to me, so the answer is I don't know. Any lot will do in my mind. We will take any lot where there's a warm community of welcoming people, quite honestly, and I think they can park, laterally and stay fine, so they don't have to park on the slope.
Okay.
Here, Doug.
I had a question about the types of lots. Would it be a fair statement to say most of them are churches and in commercial areas? The second question is, where's the Malibu lot?
The Malibu lot is going to be a state lot. It's a state park lot, owned by the state. And I actually haven't seen the lot. It's being, all of that advocacy work is being done by that Malibu group. I can't remember what's the name of it.
Well, it started the Malibu Task Force, and
Yes.
now it's Malibu City.
Oh, okay, right. So there is a group up there. And to answer your question, so of the 8 lots that are actually going, 4 of them are private and 4 are public lots, okay? And we find it easier to work on private lots because the private lot owners are not nearly as I guess, meticulous or as fastidious as the public lot owners.
And are the private ones mostly in commercial areas?
No, so just to go through it, the private lot in Koreatown is right in the middle of Koreatown, not commercial, it's residential area. The private lot, the synagogue that we use on La Cienega is residential, it's part of the South Robertson Neighborhood Council. The private lot in South LA that's not run by our group, but run by another group is residential. And the private lot the other private lot in North Hills is in a residential area, not run by our group, but yeah.
Nancy?
I was curious, but you said, you said there was no follow-up about what happens to people when they leave.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that if there was follow-up, wouldn't it be a great thing? Because you could get good news and use it to open more and more lots.
Right, so we had what we call a hackathon this weekend, to try and connect to all of our former users, okay? So we know that we want that data, we want to know what happens to them. But most of them, interestingly enough, and I gave you the 500 people that we touched base with, I gave you the number 1,000 in the beginning of the talk. There are 500 people that when we called them back, because we can't always answer the phone, I don't like that service, I want to be able to answer the phone or answer the email right away. When we respond to those people, they don't call back. So that's the follow-up, that's the difficulty. So if somebody leaves and we don't really know about it, it's hard, they just don't readily want to give us that information.
And then couldn't they also just go to another lot?
Well,
Do you have lot hoppers?
No, we don't, and they can't, because the lots, we tightly manage them too much. So we have a log of everybody who comes on lot every single night, and we all of us get a download from the guard every single morning at 6:30 in the morning of who was on the lot, what their placard numbers, so we have a placard, they're all permitted, so you have to sign waivers, a responsibility, and we do a lot of this electronically now. We're in San Diego and Santa Barbara, it's all done in person. We did that in the beginning, but because LA is so big, and we were trying to manage so many people who had so much need, and our lots were not next door to one another. I gave a talk in Chatsworth one day, and in San Pedro that same day. It took me 2 hours to get there. So welcome to LA, right?
Sharon?
How large is your staff, or how many volunteers do you have helping you make this work?
Yeah, good question. So there's 3 staff, and
Paid staff?
3 paid staff. Well, two full-time paid staff, and 1 intern who works 32 hours a week for us. I think I have to pay her internship program, I don't pay her. But she's like staff, so it's almost 3 full-time staff. And then there's 6 volunteers that work, 4 of us work full-time on this. Yeah. And then we're bringing in a lot of coordination, part of the program where somebody like Carl will serve as a lot coordinator, which will help us better case manage rather than have security.
Question over here?
I think Alex, did you have one?
No, it was just in regards to Malibu.
You're-
No, it would be an answer to what I gave, but it was on later on.
Are there certain areas that you're prioritizing as far as, as far as need, or how do you prioritize who comes next?
Yeah, it's a good question. So every county supervisor has a need, and every city councilman has a need. Every neighborhood council has a need. So in the ideal world, every neighborhood council, which there are 102 now or something like that, every neighborhood council should have a safe parking program. That's my goal, is to have one, because that would cover the density that's needed of the people that could benefit from a safe parking program. Most, I mentioned 300, that's the ideal number. And here's the other thing is, we look at, to your point, I think, or somebody's point, of the turnover. So when we ask for discretionary money, when we go to the city and the county for vehicle maintenance, et cetera, we use a turnover of 4 months. So we think we can get somebody off lot within a 4-month period of time. We've had a few 5 months, but pretty much people leave after 4 months if we can get them case managed, get them properly connected to a housing manager and a navigator. So if we turn over a lot 3 times, then that means that the 10 spaces we have at one lot is really 30 spaces annualized. And so that's part of the way that we look at our program. We're hoping to, we're planning on hosting the first safe parking conference in America this May, and we're bringing in all the experts. So Santa Barbara, San Diego, people from other cities that want to do safe parking in the county. Remember, there are 88 cities in the county. They all have issues with vehicular homelessness, and so a lot of them want to learn. And so we get calls, quite often from some of the cities. We've given talks all throughout the county, just telling people our experience and what the template is.
Where do the case managers come from?
Well, they come from people concerned. They come from loss of funding people concerned. LASA has its own outreach workers, but all of the social service agencies are funded mostly through LASA funding, and the Prop H money is where we've gotten many more case managers than we used to, and we still have them. So we will change the model where there will be case management on site, just taking a while to get everybody used to that. Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be cheaper because 300 times 132
Oh, yeah,
is
thank you.
$39 million
Yeah,
a year.
That ain't happening.
So hopefully you'll be able to figure out how to manage them.
I don't think I'll be running safe parking by then. Either because they will have fired me or I will have been exhausted.
Doesn't Walmart do something?
Walmart used to allow people under the radar to park. And because of that ordinance that I suggested earlier, anybody can offer anybody a spot to park at night. So Ralph's up here, you could park at Ralph's. If Ralph says it's okay, you can park there. They don't have to go get clearance for that.
So is there any way we could talk to Ralph's and maybe people would respond to that and shock them or they would let them do that? You know what I mean? You should offer
I
that
think
as a perk to those
it's a great idea, but to be honest with you, I don't really have the bandwidth to have those conversations. I need local people to have that conversation. I need somebody here to be the cheerleader, okay? I'm out of cheerleading.
Any more questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I can project too. Okay, thank you. So I'm a somewhat recent college graduate. I know too many homeless college students, and I was wondering if you've had any conversations with universities about how you could support their students, or maybe how they can help subsidize some of these costs.
So, thank you for that excellent question. So we've had conversations with Santa Monica Community College, where there's a student-run organization trying to get their own safe parking program going for their students. LA City College on Vermont is in the throes of doing their research on safe parking, so we met with them. And all of the community colleges, not CSUN, not UCLA, not USC, to be excluded, because they do too, but the community colleges have the biggest problem. And they're all trying to get their arms around it. And they actually have an easier task of managing their students because many of them have great parking facilities. And students in general are way more theoretically cooperative if they know they have a safe place to park, so they don't have to counselor. They, and the other college we've gone to LA City, LA, Santa Monica College, and one more of the city colleges. Plus we talked to CSUN, plus the UCLA students, the ones who did the Students for Shelter, the one at the church in Santa Monica, all know about safe parking and are trying to have those conversations. But it's complicated. How you get it staffed, how you get it managed, how you get it funded, all takes time. But the conversation's there. Until the strike, LAUSD was all over safe parking. They have all kinds of lots that they wanted to bring in safe parking for their families only. Families with kids who are part of the LAUSD program who need a safe place to park. So we looked at 3 sites with them that were not anywhere near this area, but 3 sites, because what they did a study of all the families who are self-identified as homeless. Many of them don't identify. When you first enroll in LAUSD, I guess every fall, you fill out a brief questionnaire, and a lot of people do not want the statement attached to them of being homeless. But of the hundreds of people that did identify, they picked out 3 empty parking lots that were not actually by a school, but they owned the land where they wanted to develop safe parking program. But then the strike came on. But their mandate is by next summer to have the concept in front of the board of LAUSD of safe parking in some of their lots. So there's pretty cool stuff going on.
Any more questions?
Is your PowerPoint available online?
No, it's proprietary. It's $100. $132,000. I knew I learned that. Yes, of course.
Yeah. I think then we're done. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. And thank you both for all you do and for safe parking and for sharing with us.
So to summarize here, it is not the task force's mission to promote a particular solution. As was mentioned, this 3D printing idea There are lots of different ideas, and our goal is really to explore them, just as we've done tonight. There's lots of complexity in the whole homelessness and housing and vehicle dwelling issues. So I hope you've taken away some ideas tonight that you can share with others.
And then, our March meeting, we're hoping to find some residents who have lived near safe parking and who have lived near permanent supportive housing to come in and allow us just to have a discussion with them. So you will have heard about permanent supportive housing, you will have heard about safe parking. Hopefully we can find some just really candid neighbors that have experienced it firsthand, and you'll have an opportunity to talk to them. And then April, May, June, after our March meeting, then we're going to have a community discussion about what our thoughts are about everything we've learned the last few months.
So, thank you all for coming. Good night. Oh.
Figures from the homeless count the other night?
We are not ready to share those. We're not allowed to share those numbers. Generally, Kim, do you want to say something? And I'll go keep the lights from turning out.
Generally, there are a lot less homeless individuals, a lot less homeless encampments, a lot less tents, but there's a ratchet up in the vehicle dwellers. And then we can't give raw data until LAHSA publishes what they have in the spring, because they take all the data and they make formulations and then give their results. But that's generally what we found.
Is that just Palisades or?
Yes, just Palisades.
Okay, thank you all. Good night.
Anything. Beverages.
It was my own fault. I wanted to say hi. How are you? Thank you for everything that you did. I did not. I missed by 80 votes, but it was totally my own fault. I gave everybody that was supposed to come out what they did. I just had to work the line, and I did. Just let me know. All about dignity still. I'm going to get over that. Let me get
Wednesday.
Hey, Jess, how the heck are you? You're right solo.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he does. Wow, that is a huge animal.
He's so cute.
What is that little toy?
That's his number.
That's amazing.
I know.
Look at this cat. Look at those little eyes. Yes, so do I. What a wonderful animal.